right, Zeke Jones here in Tampere, Finland, after Team USA brings home the freestyle title. First one since 1984. Zeke, you were around the USA Wrestling program extensively, obviously. Where did you see the seeds for something like this planted? Where did this all begin, in your opinion?
Well, it ultimately always starts with the 1984 team, showing you that anything can happen. Actually, I was talking to Mike Davies, who was a silver medalist in 1984 on that team, and we were talking about the opportunity for the U.S. team to win it, and then ultimately it happened today.
You know, going back in the more recent past, you know, were there any changes that were put in place, in your opinion, that were vital to something like this?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I really believe the reason why you have this kind of experience and the types of medals and ultimately champions is we made a considerable investment over the last, I'd call it, 9 years, where we started to pump dollars. It's really not teaching the double leg as much as giving these kids the opportunity and resources to, one, go to the Olympic Training Center, two, be around the best programs in the country where you're mixing cadets, juniors, universities, and senior athletes together, those that are young enough, that are emotionally and physically mature enough. Mark Hall, we were bringing him to the training center when he was 13 years old. We moved Kyle Schneider to the Olympic Training Center when he was a junior in high school. It was those types of things that we were doing, and it really wasn't that you were teaching them, you were just putting them in the environment.
Where'd that all come from? Where'd those ideas come from?
I just think it was good leadership. I think, looking through all those years where, I got to USA Wrestling in '09, so I think of it from my experience. And my experience was when we brought the brightest minds together in Leadership Summit fashion, that we found that we needed to invest in our younger groups. That's what the Russians were doing. When we started to think about Satiev winning a gold medal at 19, we said we have to do that. So I think what we started to do is grab and identify the Aaron Picos and Marks and said, hey, let's get them in the environment now. I also think RTCs are a big factor. Look at Dayton Fix. Look at Gable Stevenson. I don't think those things don't happen unless you put those really good young cadet and juniors in a university and senior freestyle atmosphere. That's where you get medals. It's the smart thing to do for the U.S.
This thing looks like it's got staying power, and it's going to be in place for a long time to come, because it's not just these guys that are doing it here. There are guys at home that have won world titles. There are guys that on the cadet team that have won world titles. What's this outlook for next decade plus?
Well, I just think the investment we've made in that cadet and junior group over the last 7-8 years now is coming to fruition, right? And I think it's probably, putting the seniors on notice, right? Because you got a good group of young kids that, as we know, those cadet and junior medals become senior medals. And obviously we have some great seniors. And that's really what's going to make this team good, is when you have the leadership of guys like Burroughs, right? And Kyle Schneider, and Kyle being young, but then these cadet and juniors coming up, pushing them. That's how you build not only national championship teams, but the best teams in the world.
This, I think it was 1 point in the team standings, but it certainly wasn't squeaking by. The scores that guys were putting on the board today, I think it was like 160 to 20 in the first part of the day. 29-5 in matches. What impressed you most over the last 2 days?
Oh, that was domination. I mean, it was a good group of kids, watching them through all the training camps and then ultimately coming here to Finland. They like each other. They're friends. You can see it's more than just let's come and do our job, but let's have some fun while we're doing it. It was fun to watch them do that, to watch them make mature decisions. And sometimes when you're 16 and 17 and the first time you go overseas, the first time you go to Olympic Training Center, that excitement can keep you up late at night and make you play cards till 4 in the morning. But they didn't do that. They had a good focus, understanding that we could have fun, but we still were here to do a job, and they were really good at that.
Obviously, your guy is Zahid, and comes up one step short in a match that it could have gone either way, and some goofy stuff happened in there. What do you tell him afterwards?
Well, first off, I tell him I'm proud of him. I love him. He's done nothing but put the time and the work in. As we know, though, the best in the world are putting the work in. It's not just Zahid. The guy that won it, I'm sure, is doing the work. But it needs to be a match that One is you don't take yourself out of it. He made a couple crucial mistakes, tough call in the beginning of the match, and was in the place where he could still, rise above and beat it, but wasn't able to. And it's like anything, we're just going to go back to work. That's what we do anyways, win or lose. Nothing changes after we leave here.
You mentioned, what the Russians were doing. Was this system kind of modeled after that,
well,
about 8-9 years ago?
Yeah, I can tell you when I became the national coach, that Satiev thing stuck in my head, and I started to think, if this guy, and the Russians, as we know, historically have won medals very young, and to say it's an issue of folk style, that's not it, or to say, okay, you're in high school, you just wrestle in high school, then when you go to college, you just wrestle in college, that model will hold you back. So what we did is we found that really the science behind it is if a kid is physically and emotionally mature enough to move up a group, you move them up. If he doesn't have both, then you can't. So what we were able to do is identify the Kyle Schneiders and the Mark Halls and the Aaron Picos that were physically and emotionally mature enough, and that's what they did with Satiev. When he was 15, he was training with the senior national team, and that's all we did. We identified the kids, we started putting them in the senior pool, and we started taking them all over the world, and that's where they started jumping levels.
How much study went into Russia?
As much as, like anything, we always study the competition. It doesn't matter if you're trying to win, the city tournament and you're trying to beat the local junior high. You have to identify what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, but you got to understand what the opportunities are and the threats that you're dealing with. And obviously the Russian model has worked. They have more multiple-time World Olympic champions than we do. It's just because I think they invest earlier and put more time into them younger. That's all we started to do, and look what you're getting.
Yep.